man, we make it. Have another beer, man. There you go, there you go. We staggered out and got in the car. Off we went to a highway bar. Ponzo was a big, loud, vociferous type who knew everybody in San Joaquin Valley. From the highway bar, I went with him alone in the car to find a farmer. Instead, we wound up in Madera, Mextown, digging the girls and trying to pick up a few for him and Ricky. Then, as purple dust descended over the grape country, I found myself sitting dumbly in the car as he argued with some old Mexican at the kitchen door about the price of a watermelon the old man grew in the backyard. We got the watermelon, we ate it on the spot, and threw the rinds on the old man's dirt sidewalk. All kinds of pretty girls were cutting down the darkening street. I said, "Where in the hell are we?" "Don't worry, man," said Big Ponzo. "Tomorrow we make a lot of money. Tonight we don't worry." We went back and picked up Terry and her brother and the kid and drove to Fresno in the highway lights at night. We were all raving hungry. We bounced over the railroad tracks in Fresno and hit the wild streets of Fresno, Mextown. Strange Chinese hung out of windows, digging the Sunday night streets. Groups of Mex chicks swaggered around in slacks, mambo blasted from the jukeboxes, and lights were festooned around like Halloween. We went into a Mexican restaurant and had tacos and mashed pinto beans rolled in tortillas. It was delicious. I whipped out my last shining $5 bill, which stood between me and the New Jersey shore, and paid for Terry and me. Now I had $4. Terry and I looked at each other. "Where are we going to sleep tonight, baby?" "I don't know." Ricky was drunk. Now all he was saying was, "There you go, man, there you go," in a tender and tired voice. It had been a long day. Neither of us knew what was going on or what the good Lord appointed. Poor little Johnny fell asleep on my arm. We drove back to Sabinal. On the way, we pulled up at a sharp roadhouse on Highway 99. Ricky wanted one last beer. In back of the roadhouse were trailers and tents and a few rickety motel-style rooms. I inquired about the price, and it was $2. I asked Terry how about it, and she said fine, because we had the kid on our hands now and had to make him comfortable. So after a few beers in the saloon where sullen Okies reeled to the music of a cowboy band, Terry and I and Johnny went into a motel room and got ready to hit the sack. Ponzo kept hanging around. He had no place to sleep. Ricky slept at his father's house in the vineyard shack. "Where do you live, Ponzo?" I asked. "Nowhere, man. I'm supposed to live with Big Rosie, but she threw me out last night. I'm going to get my truck and sleep in it tonight." Guitars tinkled. Terry and I gazed at the stars together and kissed. "Mañana," she said. "Everything will be all right tomorrow. Don't you think, Sal, honey man?" "Sure, baby, mañana." It was always mañana. For the next week, that was all I heard, mañana. A lovely word and one that probably means heaven. Little Johnny jumped in bed, clothes and all, and went to sleep and spilled out of his shoes Madeira sand. Terry and I got up in the middle of the night and brushed the sand off the sheets. In the morning, I got up, washed, and took a walk around the place. We were 5 miles out of Sabinal in the cotton fields and grape vineyards. I asked a big fat woman who owned the camp if any of the tents were vacant. The cheapest one, $1 a day, was vacant. I fished up $1 and moved into it. There were a bed, a stove, a cracked mirror hanging from a pole. It was delightful. I had to stoop to get in, and when I did, there was my baby and my baby boy. We waited for Ricky and Ponzo to arrive with the truck. They arrived with beer bottles and started to get drunk in the tent. "How about the manure?" "Too late today. Tomorrow, man, we make a lot of money. Today we have a few beers." "What do you say, beer?" I didn't have to be prodded. "There you go, man, there you go," yelled Ricky. I began to see that our plans for making money with the manure truck would never materialize. The truck was parked outside the tent. It smelled like Ponzo. That night, Terry and I went to bed in the sweet night air beneath our dewy tent. It was just getting ready to go to sleep when she said, you want to love me now?" I said, "What about Johnny?" "He don't mind. He's asleep." But Johnny wasn't asleep, and he said nothing. The boys came back the next day in the manure truck and drove off to find whiskey. They came back and had a big time in the tent. That night, Ponzo said it was too cold and slept on the ground in our tent, wrapped in a big tarpaulin smelling of cow flaps. Terry hated him. She said he hung around with her brother in order to get close to her. Nothing was going to happen except starvation for Terry and me, so in the morning I walked around the countryside asking for cotton picking work. Everybody told me to go to the farm across the highway from camp. I went, and the farmer was in the kitchen with his women. He came out, listened to my story, and warned me he was paying only $3 per 100 pounds of cotton. I pictured myself picking at least 300 pounds a day and took the job. He fished out some long canvas bags from the barn and told me the picking started at dawn. I rushed back to Terry, all glee. On the way, a grape truck went over a bump in the road and threw off great bunches of grapes on the hot tar. I picked them up and took them home. Terry was glad. "Johnny and me will come with you and help." "Pshaw," I said. "No such thing. You see, it's very hard picking cotton. I show you how. I show you how." We ate the grapes, and in the evening, Ricky showed up with a loaf of bread and a pound of hamburger, and we had a picnic. In a larger tent next to ours lived a whole family of Okie cotton pickers. The grandfather sat in a chair all day long. He was too old to work. The son and daughter and their children filed every dawn across the highway to my farmer's field and went to work. At dawn the next day, I went with them. They said the cotton was heavier at dawn because of the dew, and you could make more money than in the afternoon. Nevertheless, they worked all day from dawn to sundown. The grandfather had come from Nebraska during the Great Plague of the 30s, that self-same dust cloud my Montana cowboy had told me about, with the entire family in a jalopy truck. They'd been in California ever since. They loved to work. In the 10 years, the old man's son had increased his children to the number of 4, some of whom were old enough now to pick cotton. And in that time, they had progressed from raggedy poverty and Simon Legree fields to a kind of smiling respectability in better tents, and that was all. They were extremely proud of their tent. Ever going back to Nebraska? Pshaw, there's nothing back there. What we want to do is buy a trailer. We bent down and began picking cotton. It was beautiful. Across the field there were the tents and beyond them the sere brown cotton fields that stretched out of sight to the brown Arroyo foothills, and then the snow-capped Sierras and the blue morning air. This was so much better than washing dishes on South Main Street, but I knew nothing about picking cotton. I spent too much time disengaging a white ball from its crackly bed. The others did it in one flick. Moreover, my fingertips began to bleed. I needed gloves or more experience. There was an old Negro couple in the field with us. They picked cotton with the same God-blessed patience their grandfathers had practiced in antebellum Alabama. They moved right along their rows, bent and blue, and their bags increased. My back began to ache, but it was beautiful kneeling and hiding in that earth. If I felt like resting, I did, with my face on the pillow of brown, moist earth. Birds sang an accompaniment. I thought I had found my life's work. Johnny and Terry came waving at me across the field in the hot, lull noon and pitched in with me. Be damned if little Johnny wasn't faster than I was, and of course Terry was twice as fast. They worked ahead of me and left me piles of clean cotton to add to my bag. Terry workman-like piles, Johnny little childly piles. I stuck them in with sorrow. What kind of old man was I that couldn't support his own ass, let alone theirs? They spent all afternoon with me. When the sun got red, we trudged back together. At the end of the field, I unloaded my burden on a scale. It weighed 50 pounds, and I got $1.50. Then I borrowed a bicycle from one of the Okie boys and rode down 99 to a Crossroads grocery store where I bought cans of cooked spaghetti and meatballs, bread, butter, coffee, and cake, and came back with the bag on the handlebars. LA-bound traffic zoomed by, Frisco-bound harassed my tail. I swore and swore. I looked up at the dark sky and prayed to God for a better break in life and a better chance to do something for the little people I loved. Nobody was paying attention to me up there. I should have known better. It was Terry who brought my soul back. On the tent stove, she warmed up the food, and it was one of the greatest meals of my life. I was so hungry and tired. Sighing like an old Negro cotton picker, I reclined on the bed and smoked a cigarette. Dogs barked in the cool night. Ricky and Ponzo had given up calling in the evenings. I was satisfied with that. Terry curled up beside me. Johnny sat on my chest, and they drew pictures of animals in my notebook. The light of our tent burned on the frightful plain. The cowboy music twanged in the roadhouse and carried across the fields all sadness. It was all right with me. I kissed my baby, and we put out the lights.